Cool. Well, Alex, thanks for joining us and coming for a visit.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So why don't we maybe get started with just like a quick intro into who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So obviously Alex Almonte, regional sales manager for Western Aircraft in Boise, Idaho. I've been in aviation since, if you caught when I started college in 2003 at Embry Riddle in Daytona Beach.
Okay.
I kind of consider myself to have started in aviation at that point because I went to an aviation focused college. Graduated in 2008, went to work as an air traffic controller with the FAA for a while. Found that position to not be for me.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time looking out the window, wanting to be closer to the airplanes, and I wanted to find a way to make that happen. So I was back up in the Orlando area, and I was around the Sanford airport. There were some smaller MROs around there. I just started going around and pitching a resume out to those guys. Hey, I believe I can help your company grow by bringing airplanes in, and this is my plan, right? I started with a company called Cessna Aviation there, really small, 145 repair station, just basically a principal that owned an airplane that purchased an MRO so that he'd have a place to have his airplane maintained.
Okay.
It was previously Sunjet, which were the guys that had the Payne Stewart accident. So trying to get customers to go there was difficult because it was the same Sunjet facility and all the things there in Sanford. So that stigma was still kind of in the building, even though none of the personnel were still there. But trying to convince customers of that was a difficult task.
Sure.
Fast forward probably about 12 months from that point that I started with that company, Starport across the way was having some struggles with getting airplanes to come in. Sentinel decided that they wanted to close their doors. We auctioned everything off with Steve Starman a few days after MBAA Orlando in 2011 or 12. I'm sure the viewers will bite me. My dates aren't 100%.
The fact checkers are gonna get you.
Yeah, they're gonna get in there and get me. Oh, and MBAA Orlando was 11. but yeah. So Steve Starman came in and auctioned off everything that we had in the facility, and I couldn't believe the price that things were going for in that auction. I mean, come to find out, if you wanted to get Tron Air jacks or Huff carts or any of the other things, there's like a 6-month lead time.
Sure.
And if you need that stuff for your facility, you want it now, right? So people were paying retail price for used equipment. We blew the number out of the water that we needed to give back to the investors. I mean, that was phenomenal. Because we were closing that company, the people from Starport came over and they were looking to buy some of the equipment. We had a conversation. I was like, hey, I'm going to be done here. Maybe I come over, have a conversation with you guys about doing sales for you. Mm-hmm. I did that. 5 years later, hangars full of airplanes. Constant comes in and purchases Starport. I go to I was with Constant for about 2.5 years. One of the senior leaders that was at Starport with me had made the transition over to Western Aircraft in Boise. I was having the conversations with him about Western. And I took the opportunity to go out and see the facility, and I'm really glad that I did because that's home now.
Okay.
If you had asked me 3 years ago when I'm living in Orlando, Florida, would you move to Boise, Idaho? I would probably check your temperature and say, I think you got a fever.
Yeah.
I don't know that you want to do that. But I got off the plane there at like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday or Thursday night in Idaho. It's pitch black. I'm like, my thoughts were that this is a 1-horse potato town. I didn't know anything about Boise, Idaho, really. Obviously, all the stigmas are there or whatever. The morning comes, I drive up to the facility, and I think I had in my mind a picture of what was going to be there, and it blew me away. I mean, the campus that we have in Boise at that time was incredible, and now it's even more incredible with our expansion that we have going on up there. It's interesting. You always have, for me anyway, you have these ideas in your mind about things, and then it takes very little to change that, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't founded in any kind of facts. It was only like a perception that I had based on things I had heard over the 30 years of my life, right?
So
Yeah.
what makes Boise a special place for you?
Well, I think the people of Boise would be really mad, first of all, that I'm even here on the Boise soapbox, because it's such an incredible place. We like to try and keep it secluded and basically cut off from the rest of the world. But that's become really impossible with, I think the word's out on Boise. In 3 years of me being there, real estate's doubled in price. Population's doubled. It was never designed to be that large of a city.
Right.
So there's some growing pains that are happening there with infrastructure and some other things. But outside of that, the people of Boise, Idaho, incredible. The nature and the landscape and just the great outdoors of Idaho is incredible. Best snow in the entire world at Brundage and Tamarack, which are right up in McCall. We have Sun Valley, which was the first ski resort in the United States, or maybe even in the world. I'm not sure about that. Fact checkers, you guys can can get me on that one too. But I mean, aside from that, what you have in Idaho, and not just with Western aircraft, I mean, really with a lot of things, is the drive and the determination of the people that work there. So you get a lot of these guys that grew up on farms and ranches and other stuff. They're up at 4 a.m. out feeding the animals, doing all this other stuff. These guys really only know one way, and that's to get this stuff done, right? They're hardworking. They're dedicated. And again, that's not just at Western. That's like if you called an HVAC guy in the Valley, you're going to get the same response. And I was kind of blown away by that because here in Florida, trying to get somebody to come over and work on your house or do I mean, it was a real challenge, right?
Sure.
So like I was expecting kind of similar status quo there, and that's not the case at all. I was really impressed.
Yeah. Well, now I'm sold, so let's pack up the studio and and head to Boise. Now we're from, I'm from New York originally, and I've been down in Florida for, I guess this is 12 years now, and I look at Florida almost the same way that maybe you're looking at Boise in some ways, just because Florida is way different than New York from, obviously weather, environment. I'm big into fishing, so being on the water is huge for me, but also doing business down here is, it's a more business friendly environment. But this is another place that people are running to from places up north. So, real estate's been crazy here. But yeah, you're right. Getting somebody to even come and, fix a sink for you is like, forget about it. It's really tough to get people in. But so, backing up a little bit, so you moved out, so you've been in Boise for 3 years now and been with Western. Yep. Tell me what drew you to Western as a company, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about Western, what you guys do, what you specialize in, and we can go from there.
Sure. The big draw for me was it was a smaller company that. So I would be, when I came on board there, I was the second jet RSM that was at the company. Okay. We now have 3 jet RSMs. I saw an opportunity to grow new territories that the company wasn't previously working in, bring new customers into the Western aircraft fold. I had been keeping my eye on them for several years while I was still working at Constant, because I'd known the senior leader that had gone there, and I kind of wanted to see, hey, how are things going for him over there, and I just knew that there was a place that I would have an opportunity to make a mark, and help grow a business. I knew that there were plans for this expansion that we just that were mostly completed with. We're still in the process of it, but the hangar portion is done. We'll get more into the expansion here in a few minutes.
Sure.
But, I saw the plan that was laid out in front of me, and I really liked the plan. I liked the people that were there. I liked the quality of the work that was coming out of there. I'd talked to a bunch of customers that had previously brought airplanes there, because for me as an RSM, it's important that the quality of the work that's done by the facility that my name is attached to is the highest quality of work that can be possibly achieved in the industry, right? I mean, you have a company's brand, but then as a salesperson, you have your own individual brand, right? I mean, yeah, sometimes the shirts change with the companies that you're at, but I mean, you're walking around at MBAA or at any of these shows. I mean, people recognize you for who you are, and they say, "Oh, hey, you're with Western now. Hey, that's awesome. Tell me about it."
Right.
Great. You know, so I can continue to develop my relationships and give my customers a phenomenal world-class service center to bring their airplanes to. It's kind of really a match made in heaven. And that's what I saw that we could make. And I was excited about that. And, you know, being younger in my early 30s, I was like, this is a place where I could live out the rest of my career and make home and just continue to grow a business. And that's what we're doing out there. And, you know, it's definitely not just me doing that. I mean, we have a team of, I want to say it's up to a couple hundred people there in Idaho now, that they're all got the same goal in mind. You know, let's grow this business. Let's provide the most high quality service that we can, both for the airplane and for the customer. I mean, yeah, if you're in aviation maintenance, you are in aircraft maintenance, but you're also in customer service, right? So that's a really important factor.
Yeah.
All those things.
What type of aircraft do you guys kind of specialize in?
Yeah. So, Western Aircraft's been in business for 60 years. It started out as the Morrison Knudsen Flight Department. They're the guys that built the Hoover Dam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Morrison Knudsen was a massive, construction company, and it started in 57. The need for aircraft maintenance was there on the field. And they were like, let's start an MRO to fill this need. And you know, 60 years later, it's a massive facility. We have, I got to kind of look at the list here of how many things we have, because it's very, very large. So we serve customers across the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Europe.
Okay.
Routinely have airplanes coming in as far as Isle of Man. I mean, that's a 12-hour flight to Idaho from Isle of Man. People are probably going to listen to this podcast and go, why would you bring an airplane 12 hours to Isle of Man? And, you know, I'm going to answer those questions for you over this podcast. Yeah. So keep listening and we'll give you the answers here. So the bread and butter, I would say the core of our business, we're a Pilatus authorized service center. We're King Air Kodiak service center. We're a Falcon authorized service center. We do a lot with Cessna Citation. We recently expanded into Gulfstream probably about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Actually, it would be 4 years ago now. Focused on the G4, G5, G550, and G650. The main part of the reason why the new hangar was built is to have us continue expanding into that large cabin aircraft. And the new hangar's got sky cranes, a 5-ton sky crane overhead, heated floors. It's 53,000 square feet. I believe that we can put 5 or 6, I don't remember specifically, but 5 or 6 Gulfstream 650s in that hangar at one time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, very, very large footprint.
Sure.
The other thing that's awesome, so Idaho is a little bit colder, right? With the heated floors, we can open the doors and do like a hangar reshuffle, close the doors, and within 20 or 30 minutes, you can feel the temperatures right back. It's comfortable again.
That's awesome.
You know, so it doesn't take forever for the hangar to heat up.
Yeah.
The summer times are pretty temperate there. So like we don't really need too much in the AC department.
Right.
And it's so dry in Idaho that even when it's like 30 degrees, it doesn't feel cold out. Mm-hmm. So it's 60 here this morning, and I walked out of the hotel and I was freezing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. And it's not like I have shorts and a t-shirt on. So, the expansion though, we're really excited about the expansion. It was a $17 million expansion. It's being done in two phases. Phase one was the 53,000 square foot hangar portion, and then the 40,000 square feet of back shop space and office space that's built off is pretty close to being done. I was up in there the other day. We were doing a conference call, and I intentionally walked in my office and did the conference call from my office just to be, the first person to get in there and have a conference call done from the office. But gorgeous facility, and it's so large up in there that you almost need a road map. I mean, I almost get lost up inside this new hangar because just hallways everywhere and office space, and it's really, really nice.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm assuming, you're doing this expansion to accommodate, you guys are growing as a company, but I know that there's also, especially right now, huge demand for aircraft maintenance. And from what I'm hearing, it's tough to get in to facilities. Parts are tough to come by right now. How is the last, I guess, really 2 years now impacted, the aircraft maintenance business?
Yeah. So, initially early on, we didn't know, right? So it was, I think there was a scary time in there for everybody where we're like, are these airplanes going to keep showing up for maintenance?
Right.
Or is everything going to come to a grinding halt?
Yeah.
We saw that transportation became, a quote unquote essential business. Mm-hmm. That was really positive, I think, for the industry as a whole.
Sure.
To make sure that we didn't come to a grinding halt. And people need their airplanes. I mean, I liken people's Gulfstreams to, Cindy's Honda Civic.
Right.
She needs that Honda Civic to get to the store to get her stuff done. And Mr. CEO needs his Gulfstream to be able to go around and do his business.
Right.
So you take away someone's airplane, basically taking away their car on a grander scale. Right. I don't know that our business or any of our competitors' business ever really slowed down.
Yeah.
In talking to my friends at the other network MROs, everyone's kind of in the same position. Manpower is limited because it's a talent thing.
Sure.
And I have to say, my whole life growing up, my parents, my friends' parents, everybody that I knew, the message was always do well in school, go to college, right? And if you were going to a trade school, that was kind of looked down upon a little bit, right? But those guys are the most highly skilled technical employees that you could possibly have. I mean, they're working on a machine that's made to help humans do something we were never designed to do, right? Which is fly through the air.
Yeah.
I mean, I want that guy to be the most highly skilled guy ever. You're going to work on my BMW. Yeah, I want you to do a good job on my BMW, but if it breaks, I can pull it over.
Right.
Somebody leaves an oxygen line loose or whatever, you never know, right? So you always want the highest quality guys that you could possibly have to do that job. Well, the highest quality guys have a cost to them, right?
Sure.
I mean, every business has to look at that, and there's that fine balance. And I can't really talk to that side of our business because I'm not involved in that side of the business.
Operations side of it, yeah.
I just know that out in the industry that there's a challenge right now with finding techs. And I think it's something we've been talking about for 10 plus years. I mean,
sure.
I can remember going to MBAA 10 years ago and they were talking, hey, we're going to have a real problem with pilots and with techs. And now that day is here, right? But at the same time, we have almost double the airplanes out there flying around, and they're still making new ones.
Right.
And the fleet is continuing to grow. And I mean, you don't just throw an airplane away when it gets to be old. You continue to refurbish it and make it new. And I mean, that's another side of our business that is absolutely flourishing, which is the I guess I would call it the overhaul side of the business with our interior shop and our wood shop and our cabinetry is just unbelievable. It looks so incredible. I mean, it's art.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the way that these guys do these stitches, and they're just so meticulous with all the seams, and the attention to detail is incredible. And I always walk through there, and it always amazes me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something that I know I can't personally do it, and I'm really thankful to have a team of guys that are so skilled that can do it, because basically I can look at my customers and I can say, hey guys, look what we can do. I can say we, even though it's not.
Sure.
I can help you achieve that for your airplane.
Sure.
The new hangar's gonna have a really nice like showroom in there. I know our interior shop manager is extremely excited to have some of the space that he's gonna get in the new hangar. Avionics is gonna be, just everything is elevated with this new facility.
Very cool.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, I guess back to your point just about the talent and the personnel, and I was just speaking to a president of one of the aviation schools in the country. We're probably going to have him on in the next few weeks, but just talking about that talent and trying to bring more exposure just to the general public about the opportunities that are out there. And I think your point about I grew up and it was like, okay, you're gonna do well in high school, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna follow like these kind of steps,
right? And
I think that for the younger people out there, understanding that there's such a demand for these skilled jobs, and we're starting to see the pay and the rates for these skilled jobs go up just because there's so much demand,
right?
And sinking whatever it is, 100 or 200 grand in some cases into an education that doesn't promise you anything at all,
right,
is maybe not the best route. And there's opportunities out there. And like I was saying, talking with the president of this school, they actually have now accelerated A&P and pilot programs, and I'll let him dig into tell the details on that. But it's cool to see, there's more, I think people are talking louder about it. There's organizations that are getting involved in a different level to try and fill these gaps in these spaces. But right now with the demand being so high, and there's plenty of options out there for whether it's maintenance or interiors or overhauls, things like that. How are you guys kind of positioning Western, from a competitive standpoint? How do you guys, kind of stack up against some of the other options out there?
So geographically, if you look at the country where Western's located in Boise, Idaho, there's not very many options for aircraft maintenance. The country gets really vast once you start getting out past Kansas. And
sure.
I honestly, until I drove 40 hours across the country, I truly did not realize that. I mean, I knew it was a big country.
Yeah.
But it's a really big country. And when you get out that way, support gets to be difficult unless you know the right people to get you support.
Right.
We have full MRT for our customers, and we pretty much cover, I would say, the entire Western United States. Now, those guys are strategically located in various cities, and you can go on our website for more information about our MRT program. And we actually have a dedicated MRT line which is 1-855 MRT Tech.
Okay.
So people can literally dial that number 24/7. Airplane's got a situation, needs fixed, and we can dispatch a tech to that airplane and get you going again. We also have a really large, parts warehouse. Sometimes it doesn't always work out this way, but sometimes we can partially troubleshoot something over the phone with the customer, Sometimes we have that part in stock. Sometimes we can get that part on that truck with the tech to your airplane right then and there. Sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you want to see if there's a possibility of us doing that, you got to call the number and get somebody on the phone and see if we can help you guys out. But chances are pretty good that we're going to be able to help out.
Okay.
We have a dedicated MRT manager now. He's focused on that. He's growing that side of the business too, which is really good. MRT has been awesome.
Yeah.
Our customers love the additional support that they get from, they can come in for a scheduled maintenance event, but then, hey, outside of scheduled maintenance, we care to make sure that your airplane continues to fly, and if you have an issue, you call us up and we'll get you flying again.
Sure.
And I think that level of support is super critical to a customer. I don't want my customer calling my competition to help them.
Right.
I want to be the one call that you have to make that'll always get you fixed, right? Whether it's scheduled or unscheduled.
Sure.
That's really our goal.
Yeah.
And I think strategically, this company is really well positioned to serve customers for the long foreseeable future. This expansion it was needed. We were really out of hangar space up there. And because of where we are in the country, we get a lot of airplanes that are coming up there. It's a great place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I sound like I'm drinking a lot of the Kool-Aid, but I highly encourage people to come check it out. I mean, it's an awesome spot.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so now you've been there for a few years.
Yep.
You've spent most of your career in aviation selling, right?
Correct.
And so how, I talk with a lot of salespeople from whether it's maintenance to charter to aircraft sales to software or whatever it may be. And, they're always looking for kind of advice on, how do I effectively sell, especially in this industry? And you came into it as a pretty young guy, right?
I did.
How's that journey been for you? And how have you approached, getting into an industry that's really technical? It's like you said, CEOs, aircraft, they're putting a lot of trust in you to take care of them properly. What's been your kind of approach, and do you have kind of like maybe a recipe for success in sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's that trust. It takes time to earn trust, right? Trust isn't just given, it's earned.
Yeah.
And when someone gives you that trust, what you do with it is hypercritical, right? I always find an honor for somebody to trust me, regardless of what that situation is, right? And I always know that there's something delicate there, right? I have your trust, and I need to take good care of that, right? This is a really, really small industry, okay?
Right.
Everybody here in this room, we've all known each other in one form of life, different shirts, right?
Sure.
But same industry, right? And the name that you have for yourself is super important. So I knew early on that I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I buried myself in like the chapter 5s for all the aircraft that we were working on. I just started reading aircraft maintenance manuals. I mean, I'm not an A&P, right? But I've worked on cars really long for my whole life. My family had an automotive shop growing up. They still do. So mechanically, I understand how things work. I can read aircraft maintenance manual and understand more. More for me as a sales guy, it was more about learning where the cycles were for the maintenance events. And then once I learned where the cycles for the maintenance events were, then I started digging down and breaking down those events. So I would say, okay, a 12-month has, these items in it, and these are going to be every 12 months. And I just tried to educate myself as best I could.
Sure.
And I learned really, really early on that it's okay to not know the answer, right? So don't BS people. I think that's the biggest thing that salespeople do is they always want to have every answer to every question, and that's not the answer.
Right.
The best answer, if you don't have the answer, is, hey, that's a phenomenal question. No one's ever asked me that
Yeah.
before. I'm gonna go research that, or I'm gonna go ask my team. I have great resources back in Boise. Let me go ask them. I'm sure they've heard of it or whatever, and I'll get back to you with an answer. That's a far more valuable answer to somebody because they know when you come back with an answer that it's a legitimate answer.
Right.
You know,
I've found that, you're talking to, especially for people that are coming from outside of the industry. And at this point, we need more and more people from outside the industry.
We definitely do.
To come in. And so, not everybody that you're going to be talking to is going to be a 20-year veteran in this industry. Right. And so for people that come in, understand that the people that you're talking to can pick apart what you're saying. And if you don't know what you're talking about, it's not good, right? And so obviously you're not going to know everything. You need to take the time to dig into it and really understand who's the customer, what's their operation, what's important to them, and really try and educate yourself on as much of that as possible, but always know that you're not going to know everything. Right. And so instead of giving a half-assed answer or pretending, it's much better to be upfront and say, you know what, we haven't encountered that before. Let me call back to the office, get that answer for you, and keep it moving from there. I've found that just building relationships, there's so much stronger relationships built in that way.
Right.
And before we were talking a little bit about, kind of building those relationships, and maybe talk to me a little bit about how you've done that and how you've kept customers over the years.
Well, I mean, when you're in the aircraft maintenance, you're always going to have human factors involved, right? Mm-hmm. You're always going to have a human interacting with a machine. There's always things that can go on there, right? Whether it's a human working with an airplane or a car or any of the things, you have inherent human factors involved, right?
Sure.
There's always going to be a certain level of, I don't want to say mistakes, because we have so many processes in place to mitigate mistakes, that the number of them that I see at this company is so negligible. Like there's so few. I mean, people make mistakes. They're humans, right? But like we have a lot of really solid processes that make sure that doesn't happen here.
Right.
But in my previous lives, the way that is honestly just owning stuff, right? If a mistake happens, don't try to cover it up. Make the first phone call once you have a plan to the customer.
Sure.
And say, hey, Mr. Customer, X, Y, and Z happened. We didn't expect this. And this is what we're going to do to make it better.
Right.
And we're really sorry that it happened. And this is the solution.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had to have that conversation at this new company, which has been a breath of fresh air. And that's not to say anything about the previous places that I've been at, because they were all phenomenal companies too, with phenomenal team members and all the things, just different processes and procedures, different organizational ways the companies were run.
Sure.
And the other thing that I really love about Western is because it's a smaller company, like in the off chance that there's ever something that's not correct, I can literally walk 3 doors down to my boss or the GM's office, and they're always there. I can close the door. I can say, this is what's going on, and it's fixed.
Yeah,
it's
how
done.
are we going to take care of it?
It's done. It's fixed. It's a non-issue.
Sure.
Versus like some of these larger companies where even the employee is just a number. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you even have a voice in that company to be able to rectify problems for your customer? I feel like that would be a really challenging issue for me as a salesperson, and I didn't want to have that.
Yeah, sure.
So because this was a smaller company, I knew I would have the ability to pivot in situations like that. And like I said, thankfully, I haven't had to do that.
Sure.
But I know 100% with confidence that if there were something that were to happen, it would be rectified immediately. I mean, the pivot would happen really quickly.
Cool.
So...
Yeah, and I guess, kind of a little bit of a pivot, but, worked with a lot of directors of maintenance in the past for whether it was like corporate flight departments, charter operations. And, as we start to see this workforce shift, and there's people that have been in, let's say, a director of maintenance position for the last 20 or 30 years, and now there's people that are now moving into these new roles, and maybe they're A&Ps and they've been working on aircraft, but they haven't necessarily gone through the process of like going out and shopping their maintenance and working with facilities. And that's really a completely different process than just working on the aircraft yourself. And so I guess for somebody stepping into that, role and now responsible for taking their aircraft somewhere, any advice for how you go about, preparing that work order, getting the right quotes, really digging into making sure where you go is going to be the right place for you?
I'm really glad you asked me that question, Greg, because if there's anything that people can take away from this conversation, DOMs in the last probably 10 years have had an advantage where they could look for the places that were light, and then they could get a deal on maintenance, right? Because there was availability to be able to get the airplanes in.
Sure.
That narrative is completely shifted in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not scheduling your maintenance events at least 6 months in advance, you're doing your owner a major disservice. You're backing yourself into a corner, and you're honestly putting your job at risk. Mm-hmm. Okay, because if you're looking for bids far out in advance, you have far more control over pricing. You have far more control over scheduling and availability of scheduling. You have far more availability for like parts lead times.
Yeah, sure.
I can think of a few projects in previous lives where, things tried to happen on a rush for like a CMS or an internet install or something. And, the project ended up going long because parts couldn't be acquired in time and all the planning couldn't happen.
Right.
And some of that is on that MRO, but majority of that's on the customer. But as an MRO, you're never going to say to the customer, hey, this is on you. Like, no, we always just try to do the best we can
you can do
to make it happen.
Right.
And then we say along the way, hey, you're probably going to incur some excessive downtime or whatever. But like planning is so critical as a customer.
Yeah.
And the larger that your event is, the further that you need to be planning that out. Like if you have a Falcon C check, you should be 1 year out on scheduling that job.
Yeah.
You should, if you're a year out for a C check, you should at least be having a conversation with a couple of the service centers that you're considering taking that airplane to.
I think the other thing that I've seen too, this has happened a lot, and I'm sure you've seen this in the past, is, customers that, you're the service center. You're going to take care of that maintenance event. Everybody out there is going to do the best job that they can for that maintenance event. But you're not the operator of the aircraft, and so you don't know, everything about that aircraft. I'm sure the customers that you see regularly, a lot more, but I've seen aircraft that have come in for service and leave and realize that a month from now they have another maintenance event, and they're asking, how come the MRO didn't take care of that? Well, you only asked them to do items on the list from 1 to 10. In a lot of cases, that's what they're going to do. They don't know the full scope of everything that's coming due on your aircraft, right? And so I think it's really important for the operators to understand that, you really need to look out even further past whatever maintenance that you're having done. And look at the areas that, you're going to be having work done and figure out, okay, is there other things that make sense? But ultimately that's on you as the customer to work together with the MRO and make sure that those things get done.
Yeah. And part of being a good salesman too is, so if you were to pull up my camp right now, my personal camp, like 285 airplanes in there of like airplanes that maybe I don't even touch those airplanes anymore, some of them.
Right.
But every 6 months I run a 1-year due list.
Sure.
Right? And every 6 months I'm looking at that going, okay, this guy's going to be coming due here, 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 and here. And I'll call him up. Be like, hey, Joe, I see in 6 months you got a fire bottle test due. I see you got this due, that due. I'm not telling him that to be a pain. A lot of the times I'll call him up. He'll be like, oh, yeah, I know I got to do. Sometimes I call him up and tell him that. Oh, man, I'm really glad you called me and told me that. I missed that one or whatever. I'm just a second set of eyes, right? And when an airplane comes in for an event, I do the same thing. Like I'll run a 6-month due list out from that day out because I know the airplane's there now, right? And if there's some, brake wear test or if there's, something that is going to catch them out 3 months down the road, like, hey, I'd like to at least give you the option to be able to get this done now while it's here. Now, sometimes people defer those items. Like if it's a 6-month item and it's due in 6 months, you're not going to do it. Right. But if it's a 24-month item and it's due in 3 months, like, yeah, you're probably going to want to do that.
Right.
And then some people like to keep all their inspections lined up. So some guys might say, no, I'll do that when I get home. But you got to at least give the guys the option to say, hey, I see that this stuff or other stuff's coming due, and is there a plan for it, right?
Right.
And people kind of appreciate that because, well, they know you're paying attention. They know you care.
Right.
I mean, and that's a major part of doing what we do.
Yeah, what you do.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, cool. I guess kind of shifting gears a little bit, you had mentioned that you've been working on cars for a long time and you're actually racing. Tell us a little bit about your race car career.
Oh, man. All right. So I've been racing for a really long time. I started when I was a little kid. Raced motorcycles professionally for a number of years. Had a really bad accident at Daytona in 2005. Broke my back, shattered my collarbone, brain hemorrhage, coma for a little while.
Oh, God.
Did a little bit of paralyzed from the waist down for a few months.
That's scary.
Yeah. It's definitely not recommended for sure. So I promised my mother that I would never race motorcycles ever again. But I probably should have been an attorney because she didn't tell me not to race. She just said motorcycles.
Okay.
So I that's what I heard anyway. Yeah. So my slogan now is with age comes the cage. Right.
Okay.
So I made the transition over to cars in 2015, 14, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Took me a while to rehab and get all the situations squared away. And then I was a crew chief for a team based in Daytona, a pro team based in Daytona for a few seasons. And I'm like, similar to when I was being a controller, I don't want to watch out the window. I don't want to watch from pit wall. I want to be out there doing it. I want to be in the car. So I went and got some licenses through the SCCA, and I purchased a NASCAR race truck that was made for road course racing. Raced that all around the Southeast. Won a couple championships with that. Went and got an FIA Class C Pro license, which I've had for several years now. The challenge with pro racing is it's not about your talent when you get to that level. It's 100% about the funding that's behind you.
Okay.
Which I've done pretty well in fundraising to this point to be able to make it to a lot of these pro races. But in order to keep going, in order to get to the next level of my career, I'm going to need a significant partner to come on board. I've made a massive capital investment in Almonte Motorsports and in my racing team with transporters and a shop in Idaho and We just picked up a new BMW M3 race car that we're going to run the full season for WRL in this year.
Okay.
WRL is 14 to 24-hour endurance races.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
all the car racing that I do at this point now is endurance racing. So like I'm in town this coming weekend's the Rolex 24 at Daytona, massive 24-hour race.
I didn't realize that's what the 24 stood for.
Yep. So that race starts at 1 or 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and it goes till 1 or 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and it races all night long, all through the night. Lamborghinis, Porsches, Ferraris, Audis, prototypes, basically any high-end sports car that you can pretty much think of, Aston Martins, they're all out there running around. Just
what is this, like a circular track, or what type of
Yeah, so Daytona's got a couple of configurations. For the 24-hour race, we use the road course configuration, which uses the banking and the infield. It's like a hybrid.
Okay.
I think technically they consider it to be 12 turns, but it's really only like 7. Really high speed, not super technical, mostly a speed track, but really, really good time. I mean, the banking at Daytona is incredible, and if you don't do at least 80, you're steering up the track to try and keep the car on the track. And then as soon as you get to 80, it's weird. The steering wheel just kind of goes straight, and you just hold the wheel straight, and the car just goes right around the banking. And it's the G-forces at like 160, 170 miles an hour are really, really, really intense. I mean, you're just being forced into the seat, and the way that the banking is, you really can't see very far in front of you because you're basically looking down into the track.
Yeah.
You know, and then we have like sun banners too. So like combined with all that, I can definitely see why the NASCARs have massive pileups. I mean, they're inches from each other, and if something happens, like you don't really have a chance to react to it. So, but from a road course standpoint, like we're not supposed to be touching each other.
Right.
You know, I've always seen racing as like, if you can get around somebody without touching them, there's far more skill in that. I mean, I think everybody's got their own opinions on racing. But I like to not touch people, you know.
I'd probably go that route if I raced as well.
Yeah. I mean, the MX-5s, the Miatas, the MX-5s are fun for bump drafting. And if you don't bump draft in like an MX-5, you're not going to, you won't win. There's no way you're going to win because the leaders are going to just link together and check out. But that's like a super low horsepower car, right? When you start going to a Porsche or a BMW or something with some significant power, I mean, the draft is still important, but it's not nearly as important as like, you know, the angry pack of bees that is a Mazda Miata running around the track. You know, I mean, those guys are like daisy chained together, and it's like impossible to get away from each other. So you're personally, one person is racing for 24 hours, or you have a team? Yeah, so it's a team.
Okay.
Anywhere between 3 to 5 drivers.
Okay.
For the 24-hour race, it's definitely advisable to have 4.
Okay.
I mean, so there's a lot of people that are always like, oh, racing's not a real sport, you're not a real athlete, blah, 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 whatever. Well, I 100% challenge any person that ever says that to get in a race car and go drive it for 2 hours. You're so exhausted by the point you get out of that car. Not only are you dehydrated, but cockpit temperatures are running like 140, 150 degrees, right? I make beef jerky at 150.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we have all these environmental systems inside the car to try and keep our core body temperatures down. There's a cooler that sits on the side of the car, inside the car, with ice and water inside of it, and the tubes flow through the shirt and through the helmet to like keep your core body temperature down. I mean, you get out of the car, I'm the color of a lobster when I get out of the car. I mean, I'm literally red. I look like I've just got out of a frying pan or whatever. And like, I'll start dumping water on me, and it's just evaporating as soon as it hits my head. Just, you know?
Well, I think also like mentally racing for that long, that's a long time to be that like in the zone, right? Like it's extremely dangerous, extremely high speeds. Like to be in the zone for that long has got to be unique.
Yeah. So because some of these races are 24 hours, you'll have weather,
Yeah.
you'll drive through the night. So like the most challenging thing that I've ever had was it was about 3:00 in the morning. It started downpouring, raining really hard.
Jeez.
So, and I had already been in the car for a couple hours at that point. Is it possible to fall asleep behind the wheel of a race car? Yes, it is. Okay, I can officially tell you, no matter how hard you're sending it, it is possible to doze off behind the wheel. It's a weird sense of calm that comes over you when you really start pushing a vehicle to that limit. I mean, because you kind of have to go to that calm mode.
Mm-hmm.
Frantic is just not going to do it, and you really shouldn't be frantic anyway.
Yeah.
So it was like 3:00 at night. It started raining pretty hard. There was a lot of traffic around me. I'd been in the car for a couple hours. I was already pretty tired. I mean, thankfully nothing bad happened, but like I can literally think of a time, if there's ever a time where I can say I wanted to be out of a race car, like I wanted to be out of that car because it was so mentally taxing that when I finally got out of the car, I just kind of sat on pit wall for like 5 minutes, just kind of decompressing, like letting all that out of me because you're so hyper focused for so long that like I felt even when I was sitting there on the pit wall after all this, I'm like, I'm still focusing on driving right now. Like I need to unfocus my mind.
Yeah.
Which is such a strange
bizarre, thing to do.
Yeah. And then, you got to go and try and go back to the RV and sleep for a little while. And you got running around on the track. And then not only that, but like, you're getting ready to go get back in the car and go do it all over again. Right. So you don't really get any sleep. Mm-hmm. So in a 24-hour race, you're kind of awake for 30 hours.
Yeah.
34 hours, because all the fanfare stuff starts at like 8 a.m. and you got driver autographs and all the other stuff that you got to do. So like, and then you just try to find time to rest when you can. You don't really sleep during that race. I mean, there might be some guys that are complete psychopaths that can get some sleep, lots of respect for those guys.
Yeah.
That's just a different level if you're able to go to sleep.
And so that race is coming up this weekend.
That's this
it's
weekend.
Like 5 days from now.
Yep.
What do you do to get prepared for that race?
So a lot of time on the simulator.
Mm-hmm.
We run on iRacing really a lot, which in the last couple of years has been a great tool too, because there was times where we all weren't allowed to go to the track too. And we all just got together on the iRacing and ran, to kind of stay sharp.
Mm-hmm. How close is that simulator to real life in regards to the equipment and the visuals?
I mean, we try to obviously make it as close as we can because, perfect practice makes perfect.
Sure.
But, we're running a VR headset with head tracking.
Okay.
There's this thing called a butt kicker onto the seat that gives you like vibration feedback. We don't have any movement in our sim as of current. So there's no like 2 or 3 axis, which we're working on that. If a sim sponsor wants to come on board, we'd love that. Maybe Doff Reality. But then as far as like the haptics go, we're running it's called a direct drive wheel, which is basically a big electric motor that gives, I think, 20 Newton meters of force feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, enough that if you hit a wall, like if you go off and you hit a wall, you need to let go of the wheel because it'll break your fingers. Like the wheel will snap and it'll break your fingers. Like it's really strong.
Wow.
So like, and you're supposed to do that in a real race car anyway. So like, that's kind of back to that perfect practice makes perfect.
Right.
Like even if I make a mistake in the race car, in the simulator, I do the exact same thing that I would in the real race car, which is this hand comes across my chest and goes under the belt right here. My head goes down, locks out my hands, and my feet come back against the seat. So it's all one motion. Once you realize you're a passenger, to basically lock out all your stuff so that your head doesn't travel forward. I mean, your Hans stops your head from traveling any further forward than like this.
Right.
But all that stuff still stretches in an impact, right? So if you can already get it out to the point where and then your arms aren't flailing around. Like if you flip, you want everything locked.
Right.
So that you don't start flailing around, breaking arms. I mean, if an arm goes out, there's a window net, but I mean, and it's not really possible for an arm to get out a window, but I mean, just lock it down so that you don't have any issues. And I've had some really big wrecks in cars, and you walk away from it. I think my biggest fear, if I had one in a race car, would be fire. You know, having an impact where you're incapacitated or unconscious or trapped in the vehicle, and then a fire happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but we have fire systems and stuff in the car to be able to extinguish that. But I think as a driver, like if there's ever a fear that's ever been anywhere in the back of my mind, it's always been the fire. But I think that comes from me racing motorcycles for so long. Like fire is not a concern on a motorcycle. You know, like if you have a fire on a motorcycle, you just drop the thing, you walk away, you know? So being in a car, sometimes I feel somewhat claustrophobic, right? Because you're in this like 6-point harness with a Hans, and you get this window net, and you're in a container with a cage all around you and all this stuff. And you can't really like turn your head and look. I mean, I feel like sometimes if I could just like lean a little bit to the left or the right, I could go faster through a corner, but like you're
locked in.
Yeah, and even the seats are full containment. There's like these halos that come around by the side of the seat. So, I mean, racing safety has come incredibly long ways. Mm-hmm. It is really incredible how hard you can crash a car and still be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You know, which is, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great.
So you don't race motorcycles anymore. Do you ride motorcycles anymore?
So I just recently sold my last sport bike that I had, my last street bike. It was a 2014 Yamaha R1. Idaho wasn't really super conducive to having sport bikes out there. It's more of a dirt bike territory. I do still have some dirt bikes, but I think even this year I think I'm going to sell the dirt bikes too. So I'm going to be completely off two wheels, which I'm sure if my mom's listening, she'll be happy about that. So
I'm sure.
Yeah, and like last summer, I broke my orbital bone in my face on a dirt bike. Two wheels. I think I should just listen to the voices in my head that are telling me to get rid of all this stuff. So four wheels, a cage, fire suit, fire bottle, safety equipment, like racing cars is far, far safer. And like the biggest issue with a motorcycle, especially on the street, is I don't know what the guy next to me is going to do.
Exactly. That would be the biggest worry for me. You know, we're down here in Florida, and there's a lot of people on bikes, but you know, you look over to the car next to you, and they're down in their phone, and it's not about what you're doing. All it takes is somebody to, you know, run the red light or rear end you, and you're toast. You know, and so that's a scary part about it. But
they're a lot of fun. The performance of a motorcycle is anybody that's never ridden a street bike, like a sport street bike, they don't understand how fast they are. I mean, they're incredibly fast, like faster than anything else on the street. Like there's no Ferrari that's going as fast as that sport bike is. And you go down the showroom and spend 10 grand and walk away with it, you know, which is like crazy for like 18-year-old kids to have that much power, you know, but good times though.
Yeah.
Really good times.
Sure. So you said you're looking for sponsors on the race car side of things. What do you look for in a sponsor?
Yeah, so I actually consider them to be partners, right? Because I'm providing them a service as well. So what I do for my partners is the racetrack is a B2B and a B2C incubator, right? So other sponsors, other partners of other teams are also at the track in the hospitality area as well. So like, let's say, for example, Pepsi wanted to come on board with me, and let's say Pepsi's trying to sell more Pepsi to Publix, whatever. And let's say Publix is sponsoring another car, right? I can facilitate a conversation between Publix and Pepsi that's going to happen in that B2B incubator right there at the track, because those two CEOs are there to have that conversation, right? I mean, that's just one small side of it. The other side of it too is, let's say you're Craftsman, right? Craftsman wrenches or whatever, and you want to sell more of your Craftsman wrenches to Lowe's, right? Well, Lowe's brings their executives in for a weekend. Because you're Craftsman, you bring Lowe's executives to the track for the weekend, right? Like you're like, hey, I have this awesome hospitality thing. Lowe's executive, come on in and this is what we're going to host for you for the weekend. Like, this is what we do for fun. And they come out to the track, and that's their unique experience that Craftsman puts them through, because Craftsman wants to sell them more wrenches, right? So they and I can even facilitate further conversations than that too. Like, I don't really want to get into the proprietary stuff that I do, but basically I always make sure that any partner that comes on board with me has an ROI of at least 5x of what they spend to come racing with me. So if you were to spend $150,000 for the year, I'm going to make sure you get 5x of that back in business. And I'm going to work my rear end off to make sure that happens. Not just at the track, like outside of the track too, right?
And you had mentioned like social media and stuff. So how do you promote your partners in that way?
Yep. So Almonte Motorsports partnered with a company in Idaho called Sticker Status. Sticker Status is a Ceramic Pro Elite dealer, and they're also a vehicle wrap, paint protection film, tint, basically an advertising company, right? Because as somebody in motorsports, you kind of have to know that you're an advertising company that just happens to own a race team.
Right.
Like on the professional level, you're really more advertising for your partners and providing a service for your partners. Racing is just a byproduct of what happens of all that stuff going on, right? And that's really where my main focus is the business development side for my partners. And then obviously the racing happens because of that other stuff is going on. In order for us to be able to be out there racing, we have to have the partners being successful and getting a good return on their investment, or they wouldn't keep coming back. It's got to make financial sense for a company. And I don't ever approach a company, and there's a lot of companies out there that are race teams that are just like, hey, I'm going to advertise for you on the hood of my car. Oh, okay, great. That's exposure.
Right.
Like, what exposure, what is that going to do for me though? Like, so it really depends on what the company is looking for too. Like, if they're looking for just exposure, I mean, we can do that. That's easy.
Right.
Right. If they're looking for B2B or B2C, we can do that too. If they're looking to penetrate into a new market that maybe they haven't had any successes in, this is another way of being able to do it.
Sure.
Right. And really being able to provide your employees, your clients, and your potential future business partners a unique experience, something that they're going to continue to talk about, something they're going to want to keep coming back to do again, is the whole core of what we do. Right. I mean, you can literally take a guy and walk him around through the garages, and he can be standing right next to some of these super high-end sports cars, talking to the drivers. You can sit him up on top of the war wagon. You know, the race can be happening. He can put the headset on. He can feel like he's a part of the team. Stuff like that. People don't get to do that on a normal basis, right? So, and then that guy goes home and he's telling all of his friends about it. He's excited about it. And the next time you call him, he's going to answer the phone again.
Sure.
Right? Because, hey, Greg, I had a great experience with Greg at that race. Like, oh, hey, Greg, what's up? And then you guys are buddies now.
Right.
And that changes the dynamic too of how business is done. So I don't know.
Good opportunity for somebody to come in and work with you guys.
Solid opportunity to come in and work with us. And we have a phenomenal team. And I'm not the only pro driver that's in our team. So we've partnered with a couple other guys, and we're working on inking those deals. So I can't say names right now, but I can tell you that I know for certain that we do have one pro driver that'll be with us this year. In addition to myself, who is an ex-Indy car and NASCAR driver.
Okay. Very cool.
And is very prominent in all the circles. So his book of business too comes with that, right? So him and all the people he knows comes with that. On top of that, you never know what is going to come of a network when you start weaving the web, right?
Yep.
And what kind of business can come from that. And I've seen just phenomenal business deals happen at the racetrack where people have done really well.
Yeah.
Making those connections.
Well, very cool.
So,
well, good luck in this race this next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how that goes for you.
Yeah.
Last kind of topic I wanted to hit on was we had talked a little bit, and I know that you were on Chris's podcast regarding some of your work and investing in cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. And so can you give me a little bit of a rundown of your experience in that? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about how it relates to aviation, or how you see some of this technology and some of these trends maybe finding their way into aviation.
Sure. So I got into crypto in 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there, mm-hmm. right around the same time that I started working with Starport in Sanford, and a buddy who was mining it in his dorm room at MIT, and I always thought he was a pretty smart guy. He was going to MIT, so I'm like, all right, I guess I'll listen to you. And at that point, he was getting like almost 100 Bitcoin a day from his mining rig, which
100 Bitcoin a day. That's wild.
Yeah, he was getting a lot. I don't know that it was 100, and I'm sure the fact checkers will be like, the hash rate was never that high. Maybe when Satoshi first came. No, but look, crypto, aviation, racing, like all three of those things for me, they've always kind of been one and the same, because they all have speed. They all have like a certain level of sexiness to them, mm-hmm. right? And there's something different happening every day in all three of those, right? I never really, until probably maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, never really considered the deep possibility of where aviation and crypto can be tied together. Mm-hmm. But they can be very linked. In fact, one of the things that we're working on right now, and then when I say we, I mean me as a separate entity, is how to NFT property, real estate, how to NFT jets, mm-hmm. anything. So at the core, anything that is unique can be an NFT. Mm-hmm. Right. So let's say you have these two business cards, right? Let's say these are each $1, right? You got this dollar here and you get this dollar here. But let's say George Clooney signs this one. This one stays fungible. Now this one's non-fungible. This becomes a non-fungible dollar because it's a collectible. It's unique now. Mm-hmm. It's still $1, but it's unique. So like that's how NFTs work. And I think a lot of people have seen these JPEGs and they're like, $1 million for a JPEG. Like what? It's not the art. It's the code behind the art. It's what's going on in the background of the NFT that makes it valuable, mm-hmm. which is where we get into that conversation about making a jet an NFT. Because let's say I want to purchase your jet from you, right? You can literally digitally send me the property rights mm-hmm. of that jet. I fund it and it's done. It's a done deal, right? You don't need all these other intermediaries, all this other stuff. And if we could get, I think the biggest struggle that we find right now is that, okay, so like real estate, for example, there's a deed and property title, all that stuff. There's companies and stuff involved with doing that, right? And that stuff's not really digital right now.
Right.
It's just a time thing, making that transition, getting people used to. I can remember when people were like, "Oh, we now accept Visa, MasterCard, and Discover," and you're like, "Why would you want that digital money?" Like, people were like, "I'm not doing that." I remember there's a big pushback for credit cards back, X number of years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, now who the heck has cash in their wallet?
Right. Yeah. So, well, I think the way I'm looking at it, and I'm not an expert in crypto or NFTs, but right now there's a lot of like hype around NFTs, and I think that it's really the technology that's behind a lot of these things, mm-hmm. that there's hype around these images and JPEGs and stuff like that. But I think that a lot of that might go by the wayside as, this technology comes in and actually replaces some of the infrastructure and things that, are in our day-to-day lives now. Like you said, like ownership of a house or of an aircraft. And some of the other things that we're looking at is around, and I have experience in like electronic aircraft maintenance records, right? And so right now, for the most part, even still today, everybody's relying on paper records and a signature. And, in reality, it's not that difficult to go back and alter this information if you wanted to. It doesn't happen all that often. But buying parts, buying an aircraft, really understanding, okay, has this aircraft been maintained? What's the life of this part? I think that there's a really big opportunity to bring some of this technology into the space and replace some of the legacy paper and processes and things that we've dealt with forever.
Well, here in Florida, I won't say any operators' names, but there's been one particular instance I can think of an operator that was putting parts on an airplane that didn't belong on the airplane.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I need to say names.
No. Yeah.
So NFTing parts, because there's traceability, yellow tag, red tag, whatever.
Right.
I mean, being able to trace that part basically back to the mine where the metal came out of is always been a part of all of our aviation parts, right? And putting that into the smart contract of the NFT makes sure that you're not going to lose paperwork with that part, first of all. Second of all, it makes sure that the part is actually a genuine, legitimate part that belongs on there. And all the times and life cycles of all that part would go right with the NFT when you pull it off the airplane, right? So like if the whole airplane database is kept in the blockchain, right? You remove a wheel off that airplane, and let's say it goes back to Aviol for refurb, right? Well, that wheel is still the same NFT, right? All that traceability, all that's all still there in that
Right.
blockchain, right? So I think from a aircraft records standpoint, the blockchain is absolutely where we need to go.
Sure.
For sure. And it can't be hacked, it can't be manipulated.
Yeah.
And let's say there's a DOM who's doing something shady, and he's going back and he's pencil whipping inspections. Well, it's not going to fly on the blockchain. You're going to be able to see that he just did that on the blockchain. So from a regulatory standpoint too, it makes sure that everybody is doing the things they need to do when they need to do them,
Right.
and not going back and just updating them with erroneous dates.
Sure.
Because it's too easy to do that at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to do that inspection 6 months ago. Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah. No, I did it. I'm going to sign it off. Like, okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that there's a ton of opportunity there. I see it going in that direction down the road. I think there's also a huge number of obstacles to actually get there, whether it's the people, the technology, the current platforms that are out there. There's a lot to consider. Probably be a couple hours of conversation to to uncover all of those things. But I think it's cool that we're thinking about it now. It's cool to see that this type of technology is being used in other industries and it's being used effectively, which tells me like there's a real opportunity for our space. It's just one of those things like anything else. It's time, and we'll see where it goes.
The other side of that industry too, when we're talking about crypto and aviation, that maybe people have considered, there's been a lot of people that have made a lot of money with cryptocurrency,
Sure.
and they want to spend it. They want to spend those gains. They want to enjoy the fruits of their labor, so to speak, right? I can think of literally 4 guys that I know of that have purchased jets with their gains from cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin or Cardano or whatever, or Ethereum or whatever they made their money in.
Right.
Right. And, those guys have aircraft maintenance they need to get done too.
Sure.
Just
Give you a ring.
Just saying, that can be possible.
Sure.
In the future.
Yeah.
It's just another form of payment. It's no different than taking Visa or MasterCard. It is a mental shift into, and actually, I firmly believe, and this is backed in science, that the cryptocurrencies are more secure than your Visa or your MasterCard. I mean, far more. I can walk by your wallet and take an RFID scan of your wallet. Now I have all your information.
Right.
You're not doing that with crypto. Like, it's just not possible.
Sure.
So there's a lot of security to it. I think it's mostly that people are afraid of what they don't know, and they don't like what they don't know, right? So because in the United States, I think there's only 20 million people in the United States that are holding cryptocurrency at the moment.
Right.
Out of 273 or 300 million or however many people live in this country.
Sure.
So it's a really small,
yeah.
Really small
Well,
portion.
I think with anything, as it becomes more prevalent in just your mainstream, life, or dealing with people that you're buying things from on a regular basis, and as that becomes just more and more mainstream, I think it becomes more acceptable, and it starts making its way into the business world in a bigger way. And so, I guess we'll just see where it all goes.
Yeah, but, it's exciting times.
Yeah,
a little scary, but
sure.
more exciting than anything else. I mean, the space is so new. And the thing that's interesting too is, we're still kind of pioneers in aviation too.
Sure.
Right? I mean, Orville and Wilbur flew in 1909? Fact checkers, get me again. Get at me, fact checkers. But look, we're at a little over 100 years of human powered flight.
Yep.
Right? That's in the scheme of humanity in general. We are not even a blip,
right,
in aviation.
Yeah.
And we're already putting people in space and talking about going to Mars and all that within 100 years.
Right.
I mean, what's the next 100 got? That's exciting. That's super exciting. And same thing goes for crypto. Like, what does that have? What's coming in the next few years there? Same thing goes for racing. It's going electric. This is a great time to be alive. I mean, technology doubles every 6 months. So you never really know where that's going to go.
Sure.
We got Boom Supersonic with their stuff happening, and I don't know. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think there's some people that are like, it's a terrible time to be alive and all that, but it's what you make it, right? Like I think there's definitely things in society that could be going a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, sure.
But that side apart from it, like aviation and all the other stuff's going phenomenal. I mean, it's going really, really well, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
well, awesome. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today.
Yeah.
I guess where can people find you?
Yeah. So, for Western aircraft, I highly suggest you check out westair.com. That has all of our capabilities list on there. It's got a lot of really good pictures of our company website on there. You can get in touch with our MRT team on there. There's also an app that you can download in the smartphone store for iPhone and Android.
Okay.
It's the Western Aircraft app. So if you go in the store, you can just download the app right there. We're working on adding additional stuff to that, but that's constantly being in development. But
cool.
That allows you to also get in touch with us through MRT and the other stuff. And then for me personally, you can find me on Instagram at AlexAlmonte9. Also on LinkedIn, you can find me just under Alex Almonte on there.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to all this stuff in the description. So. Okay,
awesome. I will say that I'd just like to give one quick plug to one of the foundations that I raced for.
Okay.
So it's Blue Help. Blue Help is a police and law enforcement suicide prevention foundation. So last year, 250 officers committed suicide. It's an epidemic. It's really terrible. These guys see some of the worst stuff you could ever imagine, or maybe you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And then they have to go home to their families. And there is a culture within the police force of kind of that macho mentality where, hey, you know, if something's bothering you, you don't talk about it. You just bury it in the box in the back of your mind. And a lot of these guys need help.
Yeah.
You know, they need our support. And the work that we do to help families that have had an officer fall. And then there's also the outreach that we do to the police communities to sit down and talk with those officers and give them kind of, I hate to use the word safe space, but give them a place where they feel comfortable with sharing what's basically eating them alive inside and making them think about considering ending their lives. And that's just, every police officer I've ever talked to has gotten into being a police officer because they want to help people. Society has attacked them pretty heavily over the last few years. And, you know, when things go south, the first phone call you make is to 911, regardless of what your stance on the police is. If you're in a situation, you're going to call the police for help. Right.
Yeah.
And we want these guys to be there. They're the reason they call it the thin blue line is because it's the line between civilization and chaos. You know, without those guys there, it's chaos.
Yeah.
So we appreciate everything they do. And if you go to bluehelp.org, every donation that you make to that society is a huge help. I know Karen Solomon would be extremely thankful for any donations that come in. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I had, I think it was a week or two ago, I saw an awful headline. It was of a husband and wife. They were both police officers and both committed suicide, and just like shocking. And I have a bunch of friends who are police officers, and down here, a few up in New York. And it's just some of the stuff that they go through, the stuff that they see, the stuff that they go through every day. And then they come back, they come home and they have a family and they have a normal life. And it's like, how do you separate those two, and how do you get comfortable and having a place to go when you're feeling in that way is huge. So that's awesome to support them, and we'll definitely add a link for that for the show. So. Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you for coming on, and we'll do it again one day.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me, Greg.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.